My name's Karen Adams and I work for NHS Education for Scotland. We need to evaluate a wide range of programmes that are being developed to support the learning of people working in support roles within the NHS across the country. We started using the Planning for Impact tool, I would say, in about 2010. We started to work with an organisation who specialise in working with people to look at the return that you get in your investment in learning and development. The Planning for Impact tool that we've been using is actually quite a simple tool to use. It does require quite a lot of thought, but we've found it to be really invaluable. The important thing about the Planning for Impact approach that we use is it starts with the identification of the outcomes that we want to see for the service. So why do we want to actually do something different? What benefits do we want the organisation to gain from what we're doing? And then we look at, well, what is it that people need to do in order for those benefits to be realised? When we're using a Planning for Impact approach, the first thing we start off with is working with the stakeholders to identify what is it that we really need to achieve. What does good look like in terms of the service that we're providing? Once we've actually worked out what the needs are, we then actually go on to look at, well, how will we know that that has actually happened? So the important thing that we're doing is actually setting objectives in relation to what the organisation needs, and then in relation to, well, what does that mean in terms of how people are working? Below that level, we're also looking at, okay, so what is it that people need to learn in order to make that change? And we need to set objectives related to their learning. Have they actually learned what it is they need in order to be able to operate effectively? And then again, below that, what's the best way for them to learn that? And in terms of that evaluation, it's very much about, have they been engaged? Do they see this as a worthwhile thing to do? And as a result of their going through the learning programme or using the material, what are they going to do as a result of that in their work? I think one interesting project where we used this Planning for Impact approach was on a pilot of an SVQ2 in facility services, which we ran for people working in facilities areas within the NHS. We were piloting the qualification to see if it would help them in terms of their career development, but would also help them to deliver service improvement. And so the first step, as I said, is to look at, well, what do we want? What does good look like? And we were looking at things like people saw this as a help to their career development, to actually help them apply for higher level posts, for example. So we thought that actually we would be able to report that people who participated in this type of qualification actually managed to gain promoted posts. We also looked at what their managers might want to see from them. And from there, we were looking at what service changes their managers were looking for. So, for example, we spoke to their managers to say, what kind of things do you want to see your staff being able to do as a result of their having done this qualification? And they were saying things like, we want to see them take more responsibility, being able to make decisions more effectively, to grow in confidence, and actually to be able to participate more in decision-making processes. Following on from the delivery of the SVQ itself, we then went back to evaluate the extent to which the individuals had achieved the objectives that were set, and to see the extent to which the objectives in terms of service change had been met. We then looked at, well, what have people achieved? What have they actually learned? And going back to interview people, in addition to seeing their certificate, they actually achieved the qualification, what did it actually mean in terms of how they felt about what they were doing? And the participants were all talking about how they felt their confidence had improved, how they could see, how they could apply things in the workplace. What we want to be able to do now is to then go back, let's say 6 months to a year following the completion of the course, to say, okay, have other changes taken place. So our managers, for example, saying, actually, we want more of our staff to have this qualification because we can see the benefit to the service.